Hello, and welcome to the Doing the Most podcast. I'm Shannon Fairweather, and I am your host. Today, I am so excited to have with me the founder of 1987 Active, some of the coolest, comfiest activewear I have ever owned. Jen DeAngelis, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this is a morning podcast. This is rare. Yeah. We don't usually do this. I made Jen some fire coffee. How's it tasting so far?
It is so good. I feel like you need to tell the people what you told me about all the adaptogens.
It's like a cocktail of a coffee, let me tell you. So what we have here is some bulletproof beans, the cleanest beans you can have, non-toxins, delicious beans, clean beans, nothing sketchy in there. And then we just put a little, Himalayan sea salt, a little cinnamon, the Himalayan sea salt for some electrolytes, a little cinnamon for taste and a little calming effect. And then in the cup, we actually have some L-theanine powder, which is good for anxiety in a sense, but also just calming you down, can kind of counterbalance the caffeine aspect. Yeah. And then we just have some MCT oil in there as well, some healthy fats.
I feel like this is the best and the worst thing that you could have done for me, because it's just going to encourage me to drink more caffeine, which is, if I have a drug in my life, that's it. Only it. It's the only thing I love.
As entrepreneurs, coffee is the drug of the entrepreneur, totally. So I'm glad you're enjoying it. I have a feeling we're going to just be absolutely buzzing on this podcast. So let's just get right into it. Yeah. So obviously, you are very well known for this brand. It is crushing all over Boston. You are 1987. But who were you before that? What was life before the brand?
Yeah, so I think, I grew up in Boulder, Colorado. I had a very, idyllic upbringing. I think it was a lot into... Boulder was the fittest town in the nation, so we were using reusable bags before everyone. The whole food movement was something I very much grew up on. I remember we weren't allowed to have so many of the snacks that are pretty commonplace, like goldfish. I remember all my friends would have crazy popsicles, and we had the healthy popsicles. And I think at one point my mom sort of gave up, but that's how I grew up. And then I went to UCLA undergrad. Ooh. I was in the Peace Corps in Albania, and then I came back and I worked for Tom's, the one-for-one shoe company. And that's basically in the Peace Corps, I sort of found my footing with social media. I launched a YouTube channel, and one of my early videos hit about 100,000 views really fast. And so I realized I had a knack for social media, but the downside of social media is that people can be incredibly mean, right?
Yeah.
Lots of trolls. It's pretty much what TikTok is today, but I was younger then, so it was much harder for me to take in that criticism. So when I came back, I was like, you know what? I think there's a huge application for social media, but for brands. And so at the time, so many brands were skeptical of Facebook and everything, because this is 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I led some of the premier campaigns for a lot of Fortune 500s, like Hilton Hotels, Four Seasons. I did the Golden Globes, so I was on the red carpet. I did a lot of that coverage and launched some of the first Facebook campaigns and everything, so and influencers. And so I think I learned so much, but what I was doing during that time was I was building teams, and it was basically like being a VP in your 20s. So there were a lot of problems that came across my desk that I genuinely didn't know how to handle, right? It's how do you build teams? How do you keep people motivated?
Right.
How do you do financial planning and things like that, and forecasting and operations? And so I realized that, I really wanted to build my own company. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was an intrapreneur at the time, so I was building something within an existing infrastructure that didn't exist, which was a digital division. But there were so many things I didn't know. And so that's when I had the idea of okay, I really want to go to business school. I think there's just a lot I can learn. So then I went to Berkeley for my MBA. So Berkeley's usually ranked around the top 5. So that was a huge feat for me. I think I had a huge imposter syndrome going into Berkeley, because I thought, did I really deserve to be here? This is a really hard school to get into. And did they make a mistake? I remember I kept having these dreams that my acceptance was going to be revoked.
Oh my gosh.
But, I went into Berkeley, and I really had the idea. My admissions essay was a direct-to-consumer clothing brand, actually. So that was the vision. And then when I was at Berkeley, tech is king, and if it's not disruptive, it's not interesting. So I really got pulled in the tech direction, and essentially my entrepreneurship class came up with an idea for an artificial intelligence application to marketing. And my teacher was like, you know what, I think this is a real idea. We got into accelerators, we won demo days, we got grants, we went into Techstars Blackstone. And basically I was raising around. So that means like you go to venture capitalists to get outside funding to essentially build a brand. And COVID happens. And I'm in New York, and I basically realize I'm unhappy. You know, I'm in a relationship that's not meant for me, and I'm running a company that I honestly don't love. Like, waking up every day was sort of a struggle. I was like, I honestly don't really want to work on this. It's not something that excites me. But it's really hard when you have something that's working well to be like, yeah, I'm good. And so I spent a lot of time with family, and I really credit them to sort of making me reevaluate my life and what was important. And so I decided to break up with a boyfriend, to stop doing the company, and I moved out of New York with 3 duffel bags, and I'm sitting on a couch with my dad, and he's like, all right, like, what's going on? What are you doing, kiddo? And I was like, you know what? I love clothes. I've always loved it. I'm not the most stylish person in the room, but I love fit. I love style. I love fabric. And I think that anyone can look good. It's just about finding something that flatters you, right?
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he was like, you know what? If that's what you love, if that's what you want to do, go do it, right? And I think that was the best piece of advice that I've ever been given. So I think who I was before, kind of looping back to that question, is I think I was living my life for other people. I was doing the things that I thought I ought to be doing, right? I should be this tech leader because so few women get into these MBA programs, like 28%. Only 2% of our companies that are venture-backed are women-led. So I felt this incredible responsibility to be this tech leader, but that was not something I loved. And it wasn't in alignment with what made me happy. And I think the same for the relationship. I think on paper we were perfect, but just it felt like something was missing, and nothing to do with him. It's just, you know, dating and relationships are, it's like peanut butter and jelly. Are you better together? You know, peanut butter and jelly can both be great, distinct on their own, but are you great together? So that's kind of how it all started, and I launched, for people who don't know, 1987, we do active loungewear, so we do ultra cozy hoodies, and we're launching our activewear side this fall. And we do everything limited edition. So all of our color runs are limited edition. And so you buy it or you lose it, essentially. And so I really started the model out of my apartment. And we've been lucky enough to have some traction on TikTok early on. And we can get into all that. But basically, if you want the coolest hoodies,
ever,
go to 1987active.com or follow us at 1987active on Instagram and TikTok.
And quick plug, I have been wearing this set here for 3 days straight, and I have not ever gotten more compliments on being so freaking comfortable in my entire life.
Exactly.
In my entire life. They're unbelievable.
I think that's the gap in the market is like you can be comfy and look like a potato, or you can look cool and feel really uncomfortable. So ideally, we're kind of breaking the category. Like, I always think of Lululemon. Prior to Lululemon, leggings were only okay to wear in a gym. And now you see girls wearing them to brunch, so on and so forth, Trader Joe's. And I would love to do that for the loungewear category. So it's kind of breaking loungewear.
Yes.
And the way to break loungewear is to make it look cool, right? Because people are only going to wear it in their apartments if they don't feel like a badass bitch in it, you know, or man. We have menswear too. So that's kind of the whole concept behind it.
You just gave me so much. Okay, so first thing I want to touch on is you must have gained so much experience through all these different positions that you had.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, I'm super grateful that I worked like a traditional 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Because not only does it make me super grateful for the schedule that I have today, which I very much, trust me, I'm working 15 hours a day, but it's on my schedule, right?
Yes.
If I want to take a 2-hour walk in the middle of the day, I can do that.
Exactly.
Assuming I don't have a call or something. But you're exactly right. And I think that life is, you know, I always think about like, it's not mine timing, it's divine timing. And you don't have to believe in God to think about that, but it's like the universe timing, right? So I don't think that I would be doing what I'm doing today with the business if I hadn't had all of that prior experience, right? When you run social media for major corporations, every post you go through so many approvals and you think about so many different sides of the business. And so I think that doing all of that and all of the influencer campaigns leading up to launching 1987 allowed me to have a lot of practices in place that I would have never had otherwise. So I think if you're in a part in your life where you're not necessarily doing exactly what you want to do, that's okay, because you might need to learn some things in order to sort of go off and do what you really want to do. I'm not saying that's the key for everyone. I think some people hit it out of the gate when they're like 19 and that's awesome. Yeah. But I think a lot of people have different life experiences that ultimately really benefit them when they find their calling and their passion.
Absolutely. And a question I wonder is, you say there's all this approval processes in terms of social media. Were there things that you found in this corporate life that were unnecessary in terms of business?
Yes, literally everything. I always joke that like half of my job in my corporate setting was just convincing people that social media was important to begin with. And I think that's why I always try to listen to our interns, because being a young person in the room, I was like, social media matters. I don't even know a different way to say that, right? Like, all of my friends are watching more YouTube than television. We should be heavily investing in this.
Yes.
And so I think it was so frustrating to sit and to see the writing on the wall and to have somebody who's like 50 or 60 not get it.
Right.
But then there was also so much red tape in terms of getting one post approved. Probably goes through like 30 hands. Right. Like, is that even necessary? And yes and no, because I think when you become publicly traded, there's always a downside risk with social media. And we see that all the time with cancel culture, right? So a brand or a person can put out a tweet that's not well thought out and essentially get canceled. So I do understand the validity, and sometimes it is necessary, but other times we're going back and forth on one word for like 4 days that really didn't matter.
And then the timing in terms of the relevance to that post could lose value.
Absolutely. So there was also so many stressful moments, like, be Pride Week or something, and then last minute somebody would decide that we had to completely redo the post, and it would be like a Saturday morning at 8 a.m. and I'd be on the beach and I'd run back to my apartment to fix everything. And I don't miss those days at all. But I think, again, I'm so grateful for the life that I lead now.
Yes, no, absolutely. And you talked about not having confidence going into Berkeley and then essentially creating a company in one of the classes that you were in that a professor saw as so valuable. How does your mindset towards your confidence and your abilities, how has that changed since?
Yeah. I think, one of my friends said that a lot of men, in order to say something, they need to be like 20% sure. Women need to be like 150% sure, right? And so if you extrapolate that across like every choice and everything, and obviously regardless of gender or non-binary, however you identify, I think everyone can struggle with feeling like enough or feeling like they deserve to be somewhere. But I see it time and time again, especially in my courses and business, is men just kind of fearlessly say something. They haven't even read the case, and they'll be like, this is what I think about it. And I would see, one of my best friends, she went to Harvard undergrad, one of the smartest people I know, and she would be really tentative to say something in class. And I'm like, dude, you're 10 times smarter than half the people in this room. Like, literally, you should just say whatever comes to your mind. But then I think, taking my own advice, there was a lot of moments where I was like, am I smart enough to be in this room? Am I smart enough to be contributing? And, I think a lot about that. And I think part of that is in my upbringing, and maybe you can identify with this a little bit, but like, if you are a girl who's not half bad looking, a lot of your compliments growing up are about the way that you look, right? And so I think so much of my confidence growing up was from people telling me that aesthetically I was fine, right?
Right.
And not so much about like my intellect and things like that. So, and not to say that that even really helped with the confidence in how I looked, but I think when we look to the next generation of women, what I would love to see is like saying, hey, that was a really thoughtful idea. That was a really kind thing to do. And I think the more that we reinforce that those values are important, and that as women, our value is really derived from not only how we look, which is honestly like bullshit, right? But also the things that we contribute and our thought leadership, that we're going to bolster the confidence of the next generation, or at least that's what I hope we can do.
Absolutely. And in order to get there, there needs to be that visualization of your ability to do these things. Because if you can't imagine yourself thriving in a classroom, creating a company, being a leader, it's very hard for it to actually happen. And just in starting to instill those beliefs in young women, but then also in ourselves, to lead by example is so important.
For sure. I think that was sort of a gap when I was growing up. It was either Sheryl Sandberg or Paris Hilton, Right. And I'm like, well, I don't feel like Paris Hilton, but I also don't really relate with Sheryl Sandberg. She has such a corporate feel, and that's not me. And then Paris Hilton is so fanfare, and that's also not me. So I think that social media has allowed a lot of females to really rise in entrepreneurship, and looking at them, you're like, wow, I identify with that. I like fashion, but I also like to think about, I don't know, a way to disrupt an industry. And so I think modeling, like you're a great example of this, is that when people are younger, being able to look at you and be like, wow, she's so cool, and like, I love her style, but she's also kicking ass in business, and that's really cool, and that's what I want to be. Like, I would love for more, you know, younger women to be like, oh, I want to own my own company, not like, oh, I want to be a model. And not that there's anything wrong with being a model, but I just think that we can shoot a little bit higher.
Oh, absolutely. And the lifestyle differences are just so important as well, because there's something incredibly freeing about being your own boss. And obviously, if you don't feel that's the route for you, it can also mean just being your own boss in a day-to-day life, just truly representing your values. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, what is the goal, right? It's really to spread our values with the world and to change the world in a positive way through our own personal missions, our soul's missions, our purposes. So just kind of digging into that has been huge for me, because once you kind of recognize how do I want to make the world a better place, it feels really good. And the ideas that come, the business opportunities that come, the people you want to surround yourself with. And something that I want to delve into just a little bit is the relationship you were in. I'm sure he was a great guy, but it's so important to recognize the people you are surrounding yourself with and how they are either positively or negatively impacting your life. And I was listening to something recently, and it was talking about essentially manipulating energy, but also just really being able to read energy and use it for your benefit. And people literally carry around their own energies. Yeah. So how difficult was it for you to kind of leave a relationship for your better energy?
Yeah, no, I think there's so many like great nuggets in what you just said. I think, first of all, I want to loop back and really applaud you for recognizing something, which is that our work is really a vehicle, right? So our 1987 is a vehicle for like my end goal, which is spreading joy or sparking joy and inspiring kind of the next generation. I want to go out and do things, and then I want to inspire other people to do the same things, right? And I want to give back as much as possible. And I think if you've been following 1987 from early on, whether it's our giveaways or dropping around and hiding hoodies in different parts of the city, I always just wanted to be a brand that people were excited to watch, and you know, especially during COVID, just something fun to look at. And I remember one of the early messages that really struck me was, as I was popping around doing these 12 days of giveaways and hiding hoodies, I had someone DM me and say like, hey, I've been having such a hard time getting out of bed because, you know, COVID, I'm just feeling like pretty depressed, and your giveaways have given me a reason to spring out of bed in the morning and go run around and kind of be a kid again. And watching a 30-year-old jump up and down when they saw a package, I'm like, isn't that so cool? And I'd love to just do more of that. So that's kind of piece one. And then piece two, I think, yeah, you're exactly right. I think one of the hardest things to do is to kind of cut an energy vampire out of your life, you know? And I think especially for empathetic people really know that. And that's been one of the hardest things for me, is to set boundaries and to be like, oh, this person's really like zapping more energy out of me than filling my cup. And I always think about your top 5. You know, they say that you're essentially a reflection of the top 5 people that you spend the most time with. So be really thoughtful about that. And I never want to be like the smartest person in the room either. So if your top 5, you're constantly like not that invigorated around, then maybe reconsider the top 5. But I think in terms of relationships, like I think about this a lot, and I don't really think that I would have done 1987 if I had been with my ex. And again, it has nothing to do with him specifically. It was just who I was. And I think I was in a way more interested in supporting him and kind of helping, because, you know, we met in business school and he was trying to do great things too. And I think there was like a part of me as a female, and sorry, I feel like this is coming to such a gender conversation, which I don't mean it to. I guess
it's just how you felt. It's very, very relatable.
Yeah, I guess it was just more like, oh, I want to be like the support and I want to help him kind of reach his goals. And he never asked me to do that. In fact, I think he wanted the opposite, but it was just the role that I felt I needed. And I think there was just so much growth that needed to happen internally for me to be like, I can stand on my own 2 feet. And I think I was somebody who was a serial dater. I always had a long-term boyfriend. Yeah. It was like a 5-year and a 3-year and a 2-year, you know, and I was never single. And if I was, it was for maybe a couple months. And I think when you root down into why is that? For me, I think it just felt like I wasn't strong enough to stand on my own 2 feet alone. And so when I had the breakup, I really promised myself, I was like, you are not getting into another relationship. And also I think the universe really protected me. Like there were a few people that I was sort of interested in and just they kind of like combusted in funny ways. And I'm like, all right, like it's like literally the universe being like, no girl, you're going to go, like 1987 is your love this year. You're going to be single the entire year and you're going to kick butt in business because you need to learn that you can do this on your own so that when you do meet that special person, you're not leaning on them. You're like, hey, I'm a badass, you're a badass, let's be even badder together.
Oh my God, yes. And that is so the goal. And sometimes I feel like that gets overshadowed in terms of idealistic relationships because it can be so easy for people to kind of just lean into the comfort of a relationship. And a lot of that comes from our childhood. Our whole lives, we rely on our parents or our teachers or our guardians, whoever that may be. And we kind of get into our 20s and we feel the need to be protected in a similar sense. Yeah. When what really allows you to have the best relationship possible with your friends, with significant others, with your family is the best relationship with yourself.
Absolutely.
And I always say to my friends, because I was single for frickin' ever. This is my first boyfriend, because I was just single forever. And I definitely was not, that's not because I was the most confident person ever, but it really allowed me to create this relationship with myself. So I always say you can only go so far with someone else as you're able to go with yourself. So I respect the fuck out of the fact that you are just focusing inward on yourself. And do you feel like there has been an immense amount of growth since the being single, starting the company? How have you changed as a person?
I mean, and I sometimes I look even at, I think the upside of documenting your life as a creator, by the way, you can follow me on TikTok, Jen DeAngelis with 2 N's and Jen DeAngelis with 1 N's on Instagram. Is that you kind of can look back and reflect. And sometimes I look at past videos, I'm like, I don't even know her. I'm like, she's like such a sad girl. Like, who is that? And so, but it was hard. Like, I remember I spent New Year's alone and I cried. And I was like, and I got invited to do things, but I just genuinely didn't really want to do anything. And I feel like those moments, they absolutely sucked in the moment. But it was kind of like facing my fears because growing up, it was like, well, what's the worst case scenario? You spend holidays alone. I'm like, all right, I spent it alone. Like, it was honestly fine. Like, I cried for like 30 minutes. I'm like, this is stupid. Like, put on a good Netflix show. Like, do a face mask. You're fine. Like, tomorrow, just wake up, have a good day.
You need that moment, though. Yeah. You need it. You need to feel it. Like, it's so true to be grateful for the hard moments, the really difficult times. I struggled with anxiety for about a year and a half, 2 years or so. Prozac, whole nine. I was in college, really, really struggling, and I remember just feeling like such in a dark place. Such in a dark place, to the point where all of a sudden I decided I was going to go abroad. And my parents like, how are you going to go abroad? You don't even stay at school for more than 3 days, because I was constantly commuting back and forth. And I went abroad, and all of a sudden, it wasn't even me who decided to go abroad. It was the higher version of myself. And you talk about looking back on content and not even really like, who is this girl, right? And it's so cool because at the same time, even like right now, we are continuously going in that process. And something I really value in life is the leveling up of life. And I feel like there are some people who don't recognize that they can level up.
100%.
They can level up. I feel like there's some people in this life who stay on the same level. And that's fine. That's fine. But if you're doing the same things, hanging out with the same people, the same routines, the same jobs, the same responsibilities, the growth isn't there. So being able to reflect on who we used to be and say like, oh, wow, I've grown so much from that. That is like, that's it for me. That's it. Like continuing to grow. And also just appreciating where we're at now, having that reflection. It's presence. And I think there's just nothing better than presence, the appreciation for how far you've come, the excitement for where you are to go.
Yeah, absolutely. At Berkeley, one of our core principles is student always. And I always was like, I never want to stop growing, never want to stop changing. And I think you see almost this like exponential lift when, everyone's kind of growing at the same rate when you're in high school and maybe college. And then after that, it's sort of choose your own adventure, right? So sometimes people plateau and some people take off. And I think if you're in a position right now where you feel like, ooh, I'm not really growing, that's okay. It's not like every year I was like kicking butt. Like, trust me, there was a lot of years where I was just grinding. And so, but I think to your point, like you have these moments of like, okay, it's my opportunity to level up. Are you going to take it, right? That moment you could have easily not gone abroad, right? You could have stayed home, but you were like, no, I'm going to level up. I'm going to face this, right? So I think when you have these like windows of opportunity, every opportunity creates the next opportunity. So I think just saying yes more and putting your fear at the back seat is really so important in terms of leveling up and growing. And I think, anxiety is also something I really struggle with. So I love that you're so brave to talk about that. But I think, each of us has our own struggles. Just because it looks so picture perfect on Instagram does not mean that you or I are just like floating on cloud nine all the time, right? Like we have dark moments, we have, shitty times, but I also think that life is made so much sweeter when it's punctuated by stuff like that, right? Because now I can really appreciate the moments where I don't feel anxious and I feel excited and I feel happy because I had all those moments where I was upset.
Absolutely. And even now, I've come so far and I love life so much and I really feel like in a really good place right now. I still have days, just anxiety.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
And it still comes. It doesn't go away. Yeah. It's like in the movie The Matrix, which I just watched, they create the leaders, the spy guys who are kind of running the whole thing. They're like, we tried to give you this perfect world. Like, we gave you guys a world with no problems and it went to shit. Like, you need that contrast in a sense. It allows you to reflect in terms of if you felt 100% all the time, that would become just baseline.
Right.
Hedonic adaptation. That would be like if you're waking up at 5 a.m. every day and it feels magical, right? Yeah. All of a sudden it would just become your routine. So mixing it up and understanding, one, that your routines, mixing those up can literally impact how you feel. But then also the low moments are still going to come. Like no matter what. That contrast is what makes the highs. Right. Because you have the lows. And then another point I also want to touch on, and I would say I read this, but I absolutely heard it on TikTok, is we have two choices every day. It's to evolve or repeat. Yeah. And sometimes you just feel the need to repeat. Some days I feel the need to sit on the couch and watch TV and just let myself recharge. But for the most part, I love evolving. I love kicking ass. So when you think of personal growth, like what are your favorite outlets in terms of just growing either spiritually or individually as a person?
I think, a few of the things like just having listened to you that I was thinking about is that one of the major mental shifts I took was it's not happening to me, it's happening for me, right? So these challenges are being presented because I have something left to learn that's going to help me in the future. And to repeat, or to evolve, I think a lot of times I'll call them like karmic situations where you will literally have the same exact thing happen to you time and time again until you learn your lesson. And this took me so long to figure out.
Oh my God.
Whether it was dealing with an archetype or like a certain situation or like a boundary, for me, it's so hard to say no to someone. If someone asks me to do something, I really want to say yes and I want to help everyone around me, but it's sort of the airplane situation, right? You have to put your mask on before you help others.
Yes.
And so if my cup's not full, I'm not.
I love you. Oh my God. This is so
hug. But I think, that is something I had to really learn this past year. Yes. Is like, yes, I want to help as many people as possible, but I also can be of no help to anyone else if I'm not helping myself.
Absolutely. Do you consider yourself an empath?
100%.
Me
too.
I
can feel it. It's like a vibe.
1,000,000%. Like 1,000,000%. And when you say sometimes the universe will bring you through certain situations over and over again until you learn your lessons, I've learned this so much with, one, learning to say no. And two, certain people, sometimes I'll get a red flag of someone who really isn't that supportive of me, or I'm with them and they're talking about their best friend. I'm like, all right, if they're talking about their best friend, what are they really?
100%.
And you get these the universe is like, oh, that was kind of sketchy, huh? And like, how about that too? And like, oh, she hasn't really supported anything you've done in the past year. And then, then you find out, oh, yeah, like this person, whatever it is, you find out that they kind of betrayed you in some way, shape, or form. You're kind of like, not surprised. And like the universe gives you these little tidbits, have it be people, have it be experiences. Even with me and alcohol, like I've been learning a lot about myself with alcohol. I've been basically sober for like 2 weeks right now, which is big for me after like the summer in Boston. My parents own a sports bar. I'm very Irish, and I was just having these nights where I was over drinking and it was taking away from the night that could have been. The experiences that could have been. So I really have just been dialing back to really like evaluate myself there, because I was constantly going out, potentially drinking too much and feeling awful the next day. So not to give various different examples, but just being aware. I think the awareness is the thing that has changed my life the most, just gaining more awareness in how certain people, things, activities make me feel.
Yeah. I think like sober curious is a really fun thing to do. It's like, why do we think that we need alcohol? And I've gone through periods of my life, like years where I had drank like a handful of times, you know, and I think it's such a personal experience, but I do think oftentimes we feel like, oh, I need a drink to be social, but it's like, do you? And it's again facing that fear. It's like, what happens if you don't have a drink and you go out? Is it really that scary when we face it? It's like, no, it's not really. Like, maybe you don't want to stay out as late, and maybe when the crowd starts getting a little rowdy, you're like, all right, I'm not really in the same place as everyone else. But like my good friend Anna just decided to kind of take a break from drinking, and it was going to just be a couple weeks, and she just decided like, I think I don't really need it anymore. Yeah. And so I think it's really cool to watch people face the fear and be like, you know what? Like, it's honestly not, that's actually detracting from what I'm doing. It's not benefiting me.
Absolutely. And even just the Doing the Most event where we were just at, I was sober for that. And usually an event like that, I'd have a drink or two, talking to new people, doing something new. And I had such a great time just being sober. And like,
you were so fun. I
thank you. Yeah. It's nice to just feel like I'm being myself and like the best version of myself, completely sober. That feels really, really good. I'm telling you right now, I will have a drink at some point, like in the next month or whatever it is. But just being aware of where I can make changes and play around with things has felt really, really good. Even with caffeine, like I take days off of caffeine where I just have tea or I just have this thing called mud water, and then I come back to the caffeine and it feels really good. Yeah. And I feel really productive off of it. And I feel like I get more from it as well, which has been key for me.
Wait, is mud water mushroom based?
I think it is. It's like lion's mane. It's you've probably seen like some Instagram ads for it. It's pretty good. It does not hit like coffee, but it's tasty. It's like a coffee tea kind of. Okay. Yeah. I recommend trying it for sure. We have some here.
Okay. Well, I've tried like for somatics, so I think it's a similar concept.
Yeah. It's just been fun to play around with things. But let's go to being an empath. Yeah. First off, and I just have been feeling this so strongly. There's shit going down in the world right now, right?
Gosh,
like
100%.
In a great way, though. In a great way, like, so this entire planet, and let's just get kind of crazy with this conversation right now, because I feel like we're on that vibe. This planet, right, like all the neurons, it's essentially negative and positives, right? Just all together. Like, that's how everything is created, from this table to us to everything. So, obviously, like, COVID, one of the hardest things that have ever happened to us as a society in this generation, obviously. And just politically, a lot going on, a lot of unrest and societal things, and kind of a tough time. Yeah. But I also feel this awakening 100%, coming. Yeah. This awakening coming of spirituality, of love, of unconditional love, of oneness. Right. And I'm just so curious if you've felt that in a sense.
It's one of those things that I'm like, is this a confirmation bias or is this really happening? But I think it is really happening. And I've heard that like this is the year of giant awakenings. And it's almost like back to the positive and negative. It's like if you are kind of like the least bit interested in spirituality, like you got opened up. And if you weren't, then you're like completely closed off. And that there's going to be this sort of like stratification of either like you are woke AF or like you're like in the dark forever.
Yes.
And then that like amazing things will start to happen. And I think, you know, in terms of like my own spiritual awakening, because I grew up Catholic, and then when I became really into academia, I was like, that's stupid. I don't believe in any of that. And I very much cast away like any belief that I had. And I also had a lot of issues with the Catholic Church just based off of, you know, a lot of the things that have gone down. And so it was really during COVID that I had this like reawakening, and I was like, you know, I think that there's something here. And I first started just calling it like the universe, and I was praying more. And then I felt like the more I leaned into like my divine path or my life path and believing in like a oneness and awakening and signs, like I'm such a like angel number person. We can talk about that. And like I think that the universe is trying to tell me things in different ways all the time. And the more that I lean into that, the easier my life gets, the more doors open. And I always talk about 1987 just feeling like some sort of magic, like the fact that the amount of DMs that have dropped in. You know, we've had magazine covers. I have something coming out in November that I should come back and talk about once it launches. But like these amazing opportunities that honestly I didn't even like think were possible for me started dropping in my lap. And I think when you start feeling in the flow and the magic, it's like, how can I not believe? You know, it's like,
oh my God. How can you not believe? And it's so crazy that you say you lean into it, because that's exactly how I describe it. The more I lean into literally what feels good, What feels good? Positive energy, meditation, affirmations, leaning into the best, even just in certain scenarios, right? Like I'm in the car and there's a ton of traffic, leaning into, all right, well, what if I play some music? Or what if I listen to an audiobook? Or what if in this conversation I'm like really just the best version of who I can be right now? And things just keep happening. Totally. Like it's the same way. It's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. Like, this is some fun game. I'm like leveling up.
It's literally
points everywhere.
A game.
Little nuggets.
If you're listening to this and you're like, what are you talking about? Like literally just listen to some Bob Proctor, the 6 phase meditation by Vishen Lakhani. Just tapping into this, it's the coolest, funnest. It's changed my entire life. Yeah, changed my entire life. And ever since I've really been doing it, the people that have been coming into my life, like the fact that I'm here with you right now is 100% because I've been leaning into this spirituality.
Yeah, it's like the high vibe tribe.
It's amazing. And we talk about woke and it seems like a joke, but it's like life is so magical. Like heaven is right now. Like heaven is right here. Like people are in heaven and people are in hell right now. Yeah. And living in the heaven of life can exist right now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's like when the people in your life just start becoming like better and better and better because you're becoming better and better and better, and then like life just gets better and better, and you're like, wow, I'm just like really loving my life right now.
Oh my God, you're gonna make me cry, dude. Like I started this, just working on myself a lot, just in the past year or so, and my relationships with every single person in my family has gone so much better. My relationship with my boyfriend, so much better. I've cut some friends out, and the ones who have stayed are my fucking sisters. Yeah. And then, in addition to that, I'm meeting the coolest people I've ever met in my whole life. I swear. And it's just opened up my heart to such a beautiful, beautiful path. But to bring it to more solidified things, what do you feel like you have manifested in this life?
I mean, 1987 and like a community, and so I can talk about angel numbers because I'm going to drop an exclusive right now. So if you don't know, my last name's DeAngelis, which means of the angels, and this is actually Sarah, who's our chief growth officer. This is her thought child, so I can't take any credit. But she was listening to a podcast that I was doing, and I was talking about angel numbers, and I was talking about my last name, and she was like, what would be really cool, and I guess just taking a side step, is that angel numbers, essentially, it's like 1111 equals manifest. So if you see that on a receipt, or you see that on the clock time and time again, it's like the universe telling you things. Or like 444 or 555, like 555 indicates change. Like there's a big change that's coming. And she was like, wouldn't it be sick if we did angel numbers on our hoodies?
Oh my gosh.
So it's the Of the Angels collection, and it's a 4-piece collection, and it's super limited edition. It's in production right now, so it should drop in like 3 to 4 weeks. So
oh my gosh, I'm amped.
So I think we should do a code. What should our code be?
Angels.
Angels. Okay, so we'll do angels for 20% off if you want it. And but essentially it's all about like the universe is trying to tell you things. And I think I've heard this thing about intuition. It's like it starts as like a little tap and then it goes into a giant roar. So kind of back to like somebody not being good in your life, or knowing that the thing that you're doing really isn't the thing that you should be doing, or that habit that you have really isn't the habit that you should have. And I think the more that I leaned into my manifestation, like literally every single morning, I will take a walk. I go to like my little manifestation spots right on the water, and I literally repeat the things that I want, what I want from 1987, what I want from my personal life, and also just like saying prayers for like gratitude, and also for the people in my life, or like the people that I know are struggling. And I do that every single morning, and I just noticed that I even did like a vision board last year. I'm about to do a new one, and I want to do it like on a canvas and get really artsy with it. But it was little things like I want to sell out of my first collection, done. I want to hit like X amount of followers, done. I want certain media opportunities, done. I want to cover a magazine, done. Like,
let's go!
Yeah, I was like had revenue goals, done. And it's just crazy to see these things that I've written down, like actually come into fruition. I have like full body chills right now, which my aunt always says is like the angels being like, yeah, bitch, like you're
I have chills too.
Like, yeah, like,
yes,
like this is life. But so I think it's like the more that you believe, and even if you don't buy into all the stuff that we're talking about, right, from a scientific perspective, just a positive thought helps people achieve things. And just repeating like, hey, I'm going to hit this goal, or I want to hit this goal, or I will hit this goal, will allow you to reach your goals faster. So even if you're not ready for like the whole awakening side, I think just every single morning being like, I'm aligned that this is my top goal, this is what I want with my life, will definitely help things just get better and manifest faster. Exactly.
And just to break it down as well, I have a manifestation practice that I do every single morning. I write down, I am so happy and grateful now that. And I will relate it to my brand. I will relate it to my finances. I will relate it to my spirituality, relationships, etc. I usually like to have 3 main ones that I'm writing down every day. And then sometimes what I'll do is like put little asterisks underneath like what that includes. Like one I have right now, I am so happy and grateful now that I consistently create content that people love. Underneath that, my content goes viral. Underneath that, I have 1 million followers. Underneath that, opportunities come to me. Underneath that, I inspire people. I put that out there. And yes, it can seem woo-woo just saying it, but what's happening is you're putting that into your subconscious. Right. So when you put it into your subconscious, naturally solutions, ideas come and flow through you because it's out there. If you're watching a certain show every single night, right? You're going to start walking around and you're going to see people that look like people in the show. Right. It's the same kind of concept. So sure, it can seem woo-woo, but it is so real at the same time. And I love, love, love the angel numbers and all. That sounds so amazing. I'm absolutely going to have to cop some of that because it's so funny that you say that because me and my friends have been talking about angel numbers a lot. And you're just giving me I literally want to create stuff with you too.
Oh my God, that'd be so fun to do like a collab.
I would absolutely love that. I think your merchandise is literally some of the greatest. I know it's like some of the greatest quality I've ever seen. I think you're nailing it with the cropped, and it's so in style. I would love to work with you on something. That would be so fun.
We should definitely do that. We're manifesting something right now.
This can be like a little teaser almost, but I would love to, if you wanted to include angel numbers, but if we could just like create almost like it could be called like the Awakening Collection.
Ooh, I love that. That is so sick.
That could be so cool. Really, really, really cool. And we don't have to talk too much business on this because let's talk some ideas in terms of logistics. But I love the way that people are coming out and talking more about personal power, awakening, manifesting, because it is a superpower. It's 100%. A real superpower, and it's just also makes life better in terms of the hard parts too. And when it comes to life, right, if it's essentially a video game, you have these hard moments, but then you kind of get yourself out of it. And then once you kind of get yourself out of it, you start to feel good, and then you have these awesome ideas, and that gets you excited because half of doing this stuff is just talking about it and getting excited. Like, you literally get dopamine from talking about things that make you excited. A trip and a business idea. Like, I will be sitting, having my coffee, getting an idea, and be like, oh my God, this content idea, or whatever it is. But then you do it, and what's so awesome is you get the full cycle of it all, and you can actually achieve it. And then it's like, what do I want to do next? 100%. What do I want to do next? What are you manifesting right now?
Our Awakening Collection. No.
I know. You were talking before this, and I was like, visual. I literally saw things.
That's so cool. Okay. I think right now we are a very Boston-based brand. I want to be a global brand. Yes. And I want to be that for so many reasons. But I think in my ideal world, it's like people, 1987 just takes on its own identity so much so that I walk around in 1987, people aren't like, oh, that's a founder. They're like, oh, is that 1987, right? To have the brand far surpass me, I think would be really phenomenal. And I think ultimately what I would love to do is to build 1987 to such a huge success that I'm then able to help other people achieve their dreams. So I've always thought about starting my own venture capital fund if I'm able to, and really look at diversified founders and female founders. And although there are some funds doing that, I just think it's honestly sort of pathetic. I've chatted with some of the people, and I just don't think we're doing it right. And I think if venture capital is creating our millionaires and billionaires and only 2% of founders are female, then that's a huge gap, right? Yep. And why aren't women being funded? Is it that women don't have as good ideas? No, and so a lot of women are doing the self-funded thing, which is exactly what I'm doing. And I would love to just break that barrier and make it a little bit easier for someone with a great idea to really take off. So I think I manifest just this world of not only women, but just people in my life getting to do the thing that fills their cup that they love every single day. And I think if I can help people do that and achieve that, that's my life mission right there, you know?
That is fucking unbelievable. And it's so funny that you say that, because I always, when people ask me what the Doing the Most mission is, it's to inspire people to find their passions and to live a life of purpose. But then also long-term, my goal is to help them financially do that. Totally. If you want to write a book, if you want to be a travel influencer,
like, pitch me. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, if I have an amazing friend who really doesn't care to be in the social eye on social media, but she lives this incredible life where she travels to Costa Rica and she travels all over the world and brings people and shows them the magic of traveling, essentially, and being in the middle of the jungle and living out there and having no tech and really immersing yourself in that experience. Yeah. And she doesn't want to be TikTok famous, but she obviously wants to share this beautiful in-person experience with people. Like, that's something I would, like, she's living her purpose. She's living her passion. So being able to help people with that, like, I align with you with that so much. I think that is just so amazing. And when it comes to marketing, to bring it back to kind of everything you've done, before we go back to the spiritual realm, I do want to ask you, where do you get these ideas in terms of the scavenger hunts and the marketing? Like, how does your brain work? I want to pick your brain in terms of the next great thing to spread your brand. Like,
yeah, I think, you know, it's on one side I'm like, is it even me? Is it like a download from my I'm like, am I just receiving downloads? I don't know. I don't even know if I'm creative. But
you are. Like Einstein and like people who have these grand ideas, like artists that, like, I think it was not to interrupt you. Yeah. It was maybe John Lennon or some great artist was like, I didn't even write this, you know, like it flew through me.
Yeah, that's exactly how you feel. Yeah, I feel more just like a vehicle a lot of times. But for instance, the Scavenger Hunt idea, which if you don't follow us, you know, those videos would hit like 50, 60, 70, 100,000 views. And I was like, really? I'm just like going around and hiding hoodies. But I remember, this is kind of back to the universe kicking out people that shouldn't be in your life. I was dating someone, and he had been way more into me the whole time. And then he kind of took like a 180. And so we were on a break, and I was just like bummed about it. And I remember being like, I just want to do something to feel good. Like, I want to go make other people's day. Because, like, selfishly, that's going to make me feel better. But also, like, I think when I get in a selfish downward spiral, I'm like, Jen, go do something for someone else. Like, that's...
I feel that.
You know, you're blessed. Go do something. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go hide a hoodie. Like, it was just a random idea that kind of popped in my head. And I was like, maybe by the end of the day, somebody will get it. And that package got swiped in like 15 minutes. I was like, whoa. And I remember just like sitting in my closet because I had just read like a shitty text. And I was like, why don't I do this more? Like, that was fun. That was cool. And I remember like I literally just picked up my camera and did a story, and I said, you know what? We're going to do 12 days of giveaways, which I would say is 100% the best campaign we've ever done. We grew immensely. We sold out of our collection. I literally went into Christmas with no inventory because we sold out of everything. And that would have never happened without the 12 days of giveaways campaign. So I think if you have these like pain moments that you're like, oh, why is this happening to me? But those are some of the times that I get most creative and most driven. And I don't know if this is a me thing or like a general thing, but it's like in the moments where I feel like, man, like nothing's aligning. Like people, like, why am I doing all this? I'll just get into this drive mode where I'm like, I'm going to achieve something today. And then those are when some of the best ideas get brokered in my mind. So whether that's me or a download or whatnot, I have no idea. But I also think just bringing it back more into business, it's, if you see something that is gaining traction, it's not a one and done. Dig into that. There's like a step and repeat process where essentially I think a lot of people get afraid. They're like, oh, well, I did that once. I don't want to fatigue the audience. But if you see like a content type, like I dress like Boston neighborhoods, those videos always do well. And it's like sometimes like, I don't know if people want to see it again. But then every time we do it again, people want it. So I think that was like a big thing that I had to learn was it's okay to do the same types of content over and over again if they're working.
Yes. And I feel like with just the market we're living in right now, have it be just logistic business ideas or even TikTok content, which is obviously so important to a business thriving right now.
Yeah.
It comes to testing and creating different content. So obviously, like you said, you had this one concept that was working, and you'll keep using it, and then once it stops working, you'll probably find something else.
Right.
I think what I've seen, because I've just been watching a lot of TikTokers in general or through brands, they'll find something that works and they'll ride that and ride that and ride that. And then if it stops working, they can either get super discouraged or they come up with something else.
Right, you gotta pivot.
You gotta pivot. And me personally, I'm just in the starting of this. I've taken the past 2 months or so to just learn TikTok because I wasn't really on TikTok. I like social media. I don't love it, but I love creating content, and I was kind of working backwards. I started this brand, I started the podcast, I had the merchandise, I had the Instagram going, but it wasn't getting the attention I wanted.
Yeah.
So essentially what I did was just took a moment, I hired someone to handle my social media so I could just focus inward on what do people want, what's working. And I really just started focusing a lot on TikTok. And what I've found is that it's not the algorithm. Like, yes, the algorithm on TikTok is working so well and TikTok's blowing up because people can go there to grow.
Right, exactly.
Which is such a cool opportunity.
Yeah.
So TikTok's going to keep being that way.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to become Instagram or Facebook where only famous people can blow up. Because on Instagram, you have to pay to play.
Yeah, I would say, like, I disagree with that a little bit. I think right now you're 100%
Yeah.
right, but I think we're at, like, an early adopter advantage within the platform. So I think there will be a day that TikTok starts to prioritize paid over organic, and it depends, like, on where, like, essentially the funding is going, and whoever is funding it is finally going to be like, okay, now we're worried about revenue versus growth, and when that switch happens, they will prioritize paid content. But to your point, right now, TikTok is 100% an amazing place to grow, and I think as local, I'm, currently a local brand, it is hyper geo-targeted. So the fact that the reason that our campaigns did so well is that we were doing things that were happening in Boston, and the content was being served to people in Boston. And so we have a Boston-based, Boston-inspired brand. So, like, all of our hoodies and things are named after Boston neighborhoods. Like, our Back Bay sets are our top sellers. And then we borrow a lot from Boston vernacular, like Wicked and things like that. So that will be a color name. And so because we were doing that, people were like, oh, this is Boston-based, and I'm in Boston. That's so cool. I want to support it. So I think if you are someone who's trying to start something, TikTok is absolutely the place to spend so much time and to have it. I always tell everyone in our company, like, we're content creators. Yeah. We're not a business. Like, that's, like, I want us to be fun to watch, and I want our content to drive everything else that we do.
Cool.
But yeah, 100%.
No, and I'm so glad you say that because you know so much more than I do.
You could be right, but I just think, like, watching this happen to Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, like, you see it happen.
And the reason why I say it is because I just really got into, like, watching TikTok and paying attention, like, not just watching in terms of, like, for, like, just enjoyment. I've been, like, paying attention, like, why are these people growing? Why is this working? And everyone right now is kind of like, oh, the algorithm just changed. Like, it's not going straight to the For You page anymore. The algorithm just changed. Like, you can't grow as quickly. And I'm sure there's truth to that. And they're definitely, obviously, like, TikTok will very likely end up being, like you were explaining, focused more on the revenue side of things. But I think right now it's still early enough 100%. To get in there and put content out there. But it's funny that you brought up the geotagging and being Boston-based, because that was going to be one of my next questions is, you obviously want to be a national brand. Yeah. What has been your strategy with focusing on Boston?
Yeah, so I think of it as, like, look, we're always going to be Boston-based, Boston-inspired. Yeah. That's the DNA of our brand that's never changing. That and cool as fuck. That's what I always tell everyone in our company. Like, North Star, if it's cool, let's do it. And if it's not, let's not do it. And I think cool is, like, a big word, right? Yeah. Like, giving back to me is cool. Yes. But also looking cool is cool. So, but basically, I'm thinking of it in markets. So I think I want to take over Massachusetts. Yes. And then we're already starting to see our secondary markets pop up, because at the end of the day, our content is still being served to people all over the United States, even though a vast majority of them are here in Boston and in Massachusetts. So I want to hit, basically walk around Boston. If anyone's in a hoodie, they're wearing 1987, right? And then repeat. I think, again, it's looking at what worked in this market, how do we repeat that in another market, and how do we scale? So it's about seeing what drives traction and not reinventing the wheel if something's working, right? So hypothetically, we should start, New York is somewhere we get a lot of orders from, so we should be doing more scavenger hunts in New York, and then LA. And I think, we also have a huge campus strategy that we're launching at UMass as kind of our, I'll call it like an incubator. We're just trying a bunch of different strategies. Like, we're going to see what hits, right? And then as soon as we know what works with our collegiate audience, there's BU, there's BC, et cetera, so on and forth. And then there's UCLA and UC Berkeley. So I definitely see us as taking on the collegiate route in year 2 of our business. We started in October of last year. We're coming up on our 1 year. So our first year was really just figuring out, like, do we have traction? Can we be profitable? Can this really be a business, not a passion project?
Right.
And year 2 is like, okay, how do we take over the markets? Who's our key demographic? Who's responding most now? And then who can we get, right? Because at the end of the day, I think college students are always going to be wearing hoodies. Will a 30-year-old always be wearing hoodies? Who knows? The loungewear category is about $20 billion in our total available market, and we're growing about 7% per year. And more people want to wear loungewear out and about. But if that trend dies, I think we will have a safety net in collegiate. So I'm always trying to think about, like, downside risk and how to mitigate that as much as possible. But at the end of the day, like I always tell people, it's like, I don't really know what I'm doing half the time. I just make an educated guess, move forward. And if, like you were saying, and if it's not working anymore, it's time to pivot.
You're so smart.
No,
I love listening to you talk. I'm learning so much from you right now as a businesswoman, as someone who wants to grow a brand, as a content creator. So thank you for all this amazing input. I think the strategy of starting in Boston is so smart. And 2 things. 1, kind of nailing it in one area, have that be Boston, or on the college side, UMass Amherst, is so smart. But then also when it comes to business, it's just, like you said, you're going to see what works. And once something works at UMass, then you'll bring it to another school. Exactly. I think that's such an intelligent way to do things, because if you're trying 10 different things in 10 different areas, what's really working? It's hard to find out, because one thing might work for a city, but another thing might work for a school.
Right, totally.
So it's kind of like having your different variables, but your controlled environment at the same time. And it's cool, because I feel like what I'm even doing with this podcast is I'm like, let me bring in the coolest people from Boston. Oh. Like that's been my goal.
I don't know if I'm quite there, but I appreciate
it. You so are. This has been, like, for me, one of the coolest combos, because we're just like, we're all over the place, but it all comes together too.
Yeah, it's all connected.
It all comes back together too. And I'm glad I got to get to kind of just like a marketing strategy kind of pull from your brain. But you talk about obviously growing in Boston and then New York and then LA, and then you're out in the schools too. I want to hear a little bit more about this fitness wear. Is that going to be like comfortable fitness wear? Is it going to be sports bras, leggings? What's your plan for that? And how are you planning to tie it in with the true heart that is 1987?
Yeah. So I'm trying to claim active loungewear as, like, our new category, a category that we're really creating and leading. So what I try to do with everything that we create is create, like, capsule collections. So if you bought something from, like, 2 drops ago and it's white and it has a tan logo, that something in the upcoming thing can either be like an inversion of that, or an easy way where you can literally look at your 1987 collection and have, like, 40 different outfits that all kind of play together, right? And so for activewear, it's definitely, I don't think of us as, like, for instance, Lululemon is, like, function, fit, form. Like, I do want us to be functional, but I also want it something that's, like, comfortable that you can lounge in, right? So these are probably pieces that you're going to wear Pilates, yoga, not necessarily run a marathon in, or you can lounge on your couch, right? So for me, again, it's like that active lounge where you can wear it to the gym, but you can also wear it to Trader Joe's.
Right.
But it definitely, for me, when I first started the brand, I'm somebody who's loves working out. I was working out so much when I was in New York, and I did every type of workout. And for me, there was a huge gap in the market for leggings. And you might be like, I think leggings are super crowded, but I think that so many of the designs on leggings are so ill-fitted. And
oh my goodness, I so agree.
And, like, I feel like they're making people look worse. And one of my least favorite things is when there's a seam on the outside of the leg. I just think that like does not look good on anyone.
Yeah.
And, like, a lot of times when you have seams running up and down, it's creating weird lines and bulges. And so for me, the tights that I liked best on the market were ultra core, but they were like $250 to $280. I'm like, that's just not accessible for most people.
Right.
And so, but they're sleek. And I was like, is there a way to recreate that type of legging, but make it at a more affordable price point so that it essentially opens up the doors for more people to wear it, right? And so, like, I want people to look, like, sleek and cool, because I think when you go into a workout and you just, like, feel like you're going to crush it, you will.
Yes.
And so that was, like, an idea that I had, and I was like, I really just want to create, like, the best leggings on the market. And then I found out that it takes a while.
Yeah.
So I've been working on it about a year. We're so close. Like,
that's awesome.
I just want them to not only be form-fitting and make you, like, when you put them on, be like, wow, I've never looked so good. But also, like, now we can go and crush a workout. Right? So that's something that we're working on. The first thing that we're releasing are one-shoulder bras, which should be happening in, like, the next few weeks, actually. And then we will bring out the leggings when they're ready. But I don't want to rush it. I'm so fastidious about quality. So if
and you have things now too that people want to buy for the fall and the winter coming up. Like I need like 6 more of these.
Yeah, exactly.
Straight up. Like the biggest thing for me with pretty much everything I wear right now is comfort. As someone who works from home, works in sitting a lot, driving a lot too, like moving around, I just want to be comfortable. I don't even wear bras anymore. So like I just straight up value comfort so much. So do you think like the fitness stuff will be super comfortable as well? Because I find too, like I have no tits. Like I literally don't have boobs, and I get like large sports bras just for them to not suffocate me. Because like nothing's worse than going to work out and be like, oh my god, my armpits look ridiculously huge right now. Like that is the worst.
Like, what happened here?
Yes, it's like it's not like I have double D's. I'm B on a good day, you know?
Our Seaport bra was exactly like that. It was just like, it was cozy, it was comfortable, it looked cool, but it wasn't something you could run a marathon in. And so I think, you know, that's one of the problems or not problems, but the challenge of the brand, right? So like, how do we continue to make something functional, but also comfortable? And I think that's going to be something that we work on time and time again. And I think for me, though, that's really exciting because I think the last thing you want to do as a brand owner is create something that already exists, right? I'm like, I want to create something that doesn't exist. So to your point, it is comfortable, but it's also functional. So, yeah, I think we're definitely working on it, and I have faith that we'll get there, but are we there today? Definitely not. We're working on it.
It's something that you're working on, and I think that allowing yourself the time to create it and really make sure it's exactly how you want to be will also generate the best results, because obviously just something you put more energy into will give more energy back.
For sure.
Things that are rushed and just put together too quickly will not work out too well.
Yeah, that's like the best compliment I can get is, hey, exactly what you said to me when I opened the door. You're like, I've been wearing this for 3 days straight. Like, I hear that so often, and it's like, you're not going to do that if it's not comfortable or if it's not high quality. And I think I really want to make sure that, hey, we're direct-to-consumer brands. So the first touch most people have with our brand is when they open up that package. And so I want to blow their expectations out of the water. And so when we get our love notes and our DMs about, like, how cozy and comfortable it is, or how their boyfriend has told them, like, hey, have you washed that? Because it's like day 5 of them wearing it. I'm like, that is the highest compliment, but please also wash your clothes.
Yes.
So I don't know. I think I have immense pride in the fact that what we are bringing is high quality, because I think there's so many brands that can just slide on the fact that an influencer's face is on it, and then you receive it and you're never going to buy with them again because it's not good quality. And I think when we think about sustainability in fashion, it's like, well, I want people to be able to wear these pieces time and time and time again, right? So like the lifetime of your wear is like 50 years, not 5 wears.
Oh, absolutely. And like even just when I fold these, I'm like, it's like this big. I'm like, it's like awesome. It's like I'm wearing this huge blanket. It's the best. I'm so obsessed with them. If you could summarize kind of just to someone like me even who wants to grow a brand through content, through really authentic value, genuine ass phenomenal stuff, right? Like what would you say your kind of outline is?
Yeah, I guess like one of the main things that I try to give like on a tangible level is the idea of failing fast and the idea of a minimal viable product. So basically, when you are starting to create something, what is the smallest piece of something that you can create without investing a lot of time and money? I think the major thing that I see people where they're like, I really want to do this thing, and they have a bunch of hangups. And so they'll either spend like 2 years and $200,000 to launch something that maybe the market doesn't even really want, or they let like that type of investment keep them from doing what they really want to do. So if you break it down and you're like, okay, what if it's just an email list? Or what if it's just something? So to bring this down a level for us, 1987, our first thing that we ever brought out was a one-shoulder bra. So I did a really small buy. I put up a Squarespace. I set a price point, and I did a social media strategy. And I was like, look, if we have traction, there's something here. And if not, I'm going to go on to the next. And so Silicon Valley, we say that's like the lean launch methodology or the fail fast. And so you're basically trying to avoid, it's so hard when you've spent tons of time to pivot, right? But if you've only just sent out a few emails, it's like, all right, that wasn't, like, my sunk cost isn't that big. Like, I'm not that emotionally tied to it. I can come up with a better idea that maybe is more prime for the market timing. And so when you create the MVP, you basically see, like, do I have traction or don't we? And we sold out. So I was like, all right, it's worth making a bigger buy and more investment and more content and things like that. But I think as a content creator, you've got to create stuff that you would watch. You've got to create stuff that you would love. Because if you don't want to watch it and it's you, literally no one's going to want to watch it. And I think exactly what you did with TikTok was so smart. Like, I hear Gary Vee, who's like, been in marketing for a really long time. And he said, the first thing you should do before creating content on a platform is to watch it. Because you want to see what are the trends? What are people watching? How does this work? And then putting your own spin on it, right? So one of the first videos that I think went viral of my page was just, I don't know if you remember this on TikTok, but there was a girl, she was a nurse, and she was in her nursing stuff, and then she flipped a shoe, and then she was like in a ball gown, and she looked really pretty, right? And so my whole beat was being single, so I was sitting there in my athletic wear, flipped a shoe, and then nothing happened, and I was like, oh, right, I don't have a date. And so it was finding a trend that was working, but making it a little bit different and something that was like working for my audience. So I think really watching the trends, but don't just exactly recreate something. Right. Be like, how do I make this me? How do I make this my brand? And I think, we could have easily done fashion show or fashion content like fall fashion trends, which we might do, but instead I dressed up as Boston neighborhoods because that's a little bit more us, right? Yes. So that was a lot of pieces. But basically, if you launch your MVP, you don't find that there's traction, that's okay. Like, I always joke that this is my third company because my first company I started when I was like 6. It was Curly's, and I only served curly fries, and it was a restaurant out of my basement. But we had paying customers, and our profit margins were actually really good because potatoes are super cheap. And then my second one was my AI, and 1987 is my third. And I know so many successful entrepreneurs, their first idea was usually not the winner. So there's also nothing wrong with being like, hey, look, I thought this was a good idea. I learned that this is a really competitive market. People don't need this, but I also learned this other thing that's actually much cooler and I'm excited about, and let's go and do that.
Yes. Cool. I love that. That is so perfect. That is so perfect.
Like, how long have we been talking?
We are over an hour now. Okay. I think that this would be the perfect time to sum up. If someone's listening right now and they want to achieve something in life, what would you say? What's your advice to someone on living their best life?
I just, like, this is so cheesy, but just do what you love. You know, I always say that 1987, not a minute of it feels like work because I love it. My last company, every minute felt like work, And I think when you are in alignment with something that you love, again, doors just open. And if you're on the right path for you, the universe is just going to make it super easy because that's what you were intended to do. But I think if you're, like, banging your head against the wall to, like, achieve something that you think you want, like, take a step back. Is that really even what you want? Because if things aren't working, obviously you want to try, and it's not like things just happen overnight. But I remember there were certain things that I wanted early on in my career that didn't manifest for me, and I was like, what am I doing wrong? But it was like, that just wasn't my path. Right. And it was so excruciating. And now when I'm in 1987, I'm not going to say things are easy all the time because they're not. I definitely work really hard, but the amount of opportunities that come to me, it's sort of incredible, right? Or the reception that we have off of things like TikTok. So I think you feel it in your bones when you know you're like, this is what I was meant to do.
Absolutely. I love that. That's so beautiful. And I know I said last question, but last question, what do you think your purpose is?
I think it's really to, like, learn things and pass down knowledge, to, like, go through hard things, achieve things, and help other people do the same thing. And I think it's just, that comes down to, like, gaining knowledge and sharing knowledge. So that's why I think podcasts are so awesome. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being on here. You are one of the smartest people I have talked to literally ever. So your experience shows. The fact that the universe is literally working through you shows. Thank you for being such an authentic, genuine inspiration. It's been awesome, and I look forward to working with you in the future.